The Ghost Army, Masters of Deception, Cold Open. It is November 1944. The Ardennes forest stretches endlessly beneath a starless sky. Somewhere in the darkness, Adolf Hitler is about to gamble everything on a final, desperate offensive. He believes his intelligence reports. He trusts his maps. He knows where the American army is positioned. He is, of course, completely wrong. 1,000 miles away, in a forest clearing near Luxembourg, 1,100 young American soldiers are about to become ghosts. They are not infantrymen. They are not tankers. They are artists, sound engineers, electricians. One of them is a saxophone player. Another designed stage sets for Broadway. They have no intention of firing a single shot in anger. And yet, before this war ends, their deception will save thousands of lives. This is the story of how the United States Army created the most audacious fake military unit ever conceived. This is the true history of the Ghost Army, and almost nobody knows it happened. Act 1. The World Before. The year is 1942. America has been at war for just over a year. The beaches at Normandy are still 20 months away. The Pacific burns with island-to-island fighting that seems endless. And in the European theater, the Germans remain undefeated. In a small interview room at Camp Forest, Tennessee, a young soldier named Bill Hogue is being asked a strange question. Can you draw? Bill says yes. Can you paint? Again, yes. Have you worked in theater? He has. He has been set designer, actor, playwright, and now the Army wants to know something else. Would you be willing to use those skills to help win the war? Bill Hogue has no idea what he is about to become part of. Neither does the Army, quite yet. But in offices far above him, in the Pentagon in Washington, D.C., a radical new idea is taking shape. An idea so unconventional that many senior officers consider it insane. They are going to create an entire fake army, not a small unit, not a simple deception. An entire fake army, complete with inflatable tanks, loudspeaker systems, and false radio broadcasts. The man driving this mad vision is Colonel Harry L. Reeder, and his partner is a visionary named General John C. H. Lee. Together, they begin recruiting the most unusual soldiers in American history. They don't want soldiers. They want artists. Throughout 1942 and 1943, these men travel to art schools, theaters, and design studios across America. They visit advertising agencies in New York. They recruit from university art programs. They look for men who understand illusion, who understand how to fool the eye, how to manipulate perception. The official designation is the 23rd Headquarters Special Troops. But among themselves, and in whispered conversations that will last for decades, they will always be known as the Ghost Army. The soldiers who join are unlike any others in uniform. Shai Schindel is a commercial artist from Brooklyn. Vic Donahue is a radio operator who loves classical music. Carl Shoup is a college student whose mother worries constantly that he will be killed. Bill Bettis is an art student who has never imagined himself as a soldier. These are men in their 20s mostly. Men who grew up in the Depression. Men who took art seriously when the world told them it was a luxury no one could afford. They train at Camp Forest, Tennessee. They learn military basics, though many will never become truly comfortable with weapons. And then in early 1944, they are given their real assignment. They are sent to England. They are told to prepare for D-Day. They are told that when the invasion comes, they will play a crucial role in its success. They just don't know what that role will be yet. What none of them understand in these early days is that they are about to become the most dangerous weapon in the American arsenal. Not because they will kill many enemies, they won't, but because they will save countless American lives by preventing bloodshed before it begins. They will fight a war with cardboard and electricity. They will win battles with sound and light, and they will do it so effectively that for 50 years, the world will have no idea they ever existed. Act 2. The Storm. The Normandy invasion comes on June 6, 1944. On the beaches, men die by the thousands. The Ghost Army watches from across the channel. They are not yet needed. They wait. On August 1st, they finally arrive on the continent. They land in France, moving inland behind the advancing American forces. Their assignment is to move to wherever the front line is tightest, wherever the fighting is most desperate, and there they are to become visible. They are to make the Germans believe that vastly more American soldiers are present than actually are. By the time they land, the deception operation has already taken shape. The Army has manufactured hundreds of inflatable rubber tanks. They look, from a distance, exactly like real tanks. Up close, a careful observer might notice something is wrong. But from a mile away, or 2 miles away, they are convincing. The Ghost Army's job is to position these fake tanks where German observers can see them, and then make them disappear before enemy artillery can target them. But rubber tanks alone are not enough. The Germans have sophisticated observers, pilots, artillery spotters. The Ghost Army has to make the invisible visible. They have to make the Germans believe their ears as well as their eyes. For this, they employ an innovation that is, for 1944, almost futuristic. They use portable radio broadcasting equipment. They record the sounds of hundreds of tanks moving through the forest, the grinding of gears, the rumble of diesel engines, the squeal of treads on pavement. These sounds are recorded on electrical discs, and then they are broadcast at deafening volume through speakers hidden in trucks, pumped out into the night air. To a German listening post 3 or 4 kilometers away, the sound is unmistakable. It is an entire armored column moving through the darkness. How many tanks? Dozens, perhaps hundreds. A major military movement is underway. The Germans report this to their commanders, and based on these false reports, German generals make decisions about where to move their own forces. It works. It works so well that the Americans immediately recognize they have something special. By September, the Ghost Army has been deployed multiple times. Each deployment is a temporary assignment. They move to a new location. They set up their inflatable tanks. They broadcast their recorded sounds. They maintain the deception for a few days or a week, and then they disappear into the night, leaving behind no trace that they were ever there except for the impact on German military decisions. The men of the Ghost Army develop a dark humor about their work. They call themselves the 23rd Nightmare Division. They joke that they are the most expendable soldiers in the entire European theater. If a deception goes wrong, if the Germans see through the illusion and attack, who will defend these artists and electricians? No one. They are utterly exposed, with inflatable tanks that pop like balloons and speakers that will not fire back. But the deceptions don't go wrong. Not in September, not in October. The Army's intelligence analysis suggests that German commanders are indeed being fooled by the Ghost Army's elaborate theater. Intelligence reports capture German radio traffic discussing troop movements that never happened, in response to illusions the Ghost Army created. The deceptions are working. American divisions are being held back from the front line because German commanders believe the Ghost Army's inflatable tanks are real, advancing units. This means fewer American soldiers die because the Germans are allocating their resources to defend against threats that don't exist. By November, the Ghost Army has conducted 11 separate operations. Each one is a success. And then comes the operation that will define their entire war. It is November 22nd, 1944. The Ghost Army receives orders to move to a small town in France called Toul. They are being sent to relieve the 35th Infantry Division, which is exhausted after weeks of brutal combat. The 35th Division is being pulled back from the line to rest and regroup. But there is a problem. If the Germans realize that the 35th Division has left the line, they will attack immediately. The American forces in the area are spread thin. A major German offensive could break through, so the Ghost Army will pretend to be the 35th Division. 1,100 men will convince the Germans that an entire division numbering over 10,000 soldiers still occupies the line. They will hold this deception for several days, maybe a week, long enough for the 35th to move to safety, long enough for reinforcements to arrive. The soldiers of the Ghost Army move into position. The inflatable tanks are positioned where German observers can see them. The speakers are set up, the equipment is tested, they are ready. On the night of November 22nd, the real 35th Division begins to withdraw. As they leave, the Ghost Army begins to broadcast. The sounds of thousands of soldiers moving in the darkness. The sounds of tanks rumbling along supply roads. The sounds of a military unit shifting positions. It is theater on a massive scale. It is a bluff in a game where the stakes are measured in human lives. The Germans are listening. They monitor the radio traffic the Ghost Army generates. They see the movement of the inflatable tanks, and they believe it. The 35th Division is still there. The Americans still occupy the line in force. The Germans do not attack. They do not realize that the line is nearly empty. They do not recognize that they are facing an army made of rubber and electricity and the desperate imagination of 1,100 young Americans. This deception holds for 4 days. 4 days during which not a single American soldier dies in this sector because the Germans are afraid to attack an enemy that doesn't exist. Not a single shot is fired. Not because the Ghost Army is stronger than the Germans, but because the Germans choose not to fire. They choose not to attack because they believe something that is not true. On November 26th, the 35th Division is safely away. American reinforcements arrive. The Ghost Army receives orders to move to a new location. They pack their inflatable tanks. They disconnect their speakers. They become ghosts again, disappearing into the military apparatus as if they were never there. But by now, the Americans know something crucial. The Ghost Army works. Not just in small ways, but in massive ways. Not just tactically, but strategically. This unit of artists and electricians and Broadway set designers can influence the movement of entire divisions. They can change the flow of a campaign, and then 3 days after they finish the tool operation, everything changes. It is December 16, 1944. Before dawn, the entire German army launches a final, desperate offensive. This is the Battle of the Bulge. This is Hitler's last gamble. 400,000 German soldiers attacking across a narrow front through the Ardennes forest, heading for the port city of Antwerp. If they can reach it, they believe they can split the American armies in half. They can force a negotiated peace. They can turn the tide of the war. The Americans are caught by surprise. The initial German attacks overrun forward positions. American units are scattered and confused. The front line collapses. American commanders scramble to respond. Divisions are being moved frantically. The situation is chaos. And in the middle of this chaos, the Ghost Army is ordered to move to the town of Bastogne in the heart of the breakthrough. They are told that the situation is critical. They are told that if the Germans break through here, the entire campaign could be lost. And they are told to do their job, to set up their inflatable tanks, to broadcast their recorded sounds, to make themselves visible in the darkness, to convince the Germans that American forces are present and ready to fight. The men load their equipment. They know the situation is desperate. They know that the deception might fail. They know that if it fails, they will be among the first to die. They are driving into a battle zone with rubber tanks and loudspeakers. They know this is suicidal, and they go anyway. They arrive at Bastogne on December 18th. The town is still American, but barely. German forces are probing the perimeter. Artillery is falling constantly. The soldiers of the Ghost Army set up their equipment in a frozen forest. The temperature drops below freezing. Their fingers go numb as they position the inflatable tanks, as they connect the loudspeakers, as they test the electrical equipment that has started to malfunction in the cold. That night they broadcast. The sounds of thousands of soldiers, the sounds of tanks, the sounds of an army preparing for battle. And the Germans hear it. The Germans report it. German commanders are told that American reinforcements have arrived, that the American lines are stronger than they thought, that an attack might fail. The deception works. The Germans don't attack Bastogne with their full force. They probe, they test the defenses, but they don't commit to a major assault. And that delay, that hesitation born from believing in illusion, is enough. It is enough for real American reinforcements to arrive. It is enough for the American position to solidify. The Ghost Army holds their position for 10 days in the frozen forest. 10 days in which they are technically at the front line of the most desperate battle of the entire European campaign. 10 days in which they could be killed at any moment. 10 days of broadcasting sounds while their hands freeze and the world around them explodes with artillery fire. In the end, no German attack comes. The German offensive stalls. The American lines hold, and the moment passes. The Battle of the Bulge continues, but the critical moment has passed. The Germans will not break through, and the Ghost Army, still virtually unknown outside the Army's highest command, will be credited with a role in preventing catastrophe. Ask T3, The Reckoning. By January 1945, the war in Europe is entering its final phase. The Germans are falling back. The Russian armies are advancing from the east. Germany's defeat is no longer a question. It is only a question of how long it will take. The Ghost Army continues its work. They conduct more deceptions, they move to new locations, they become visible, and then vanish. But the nature of their war has changed. They are no longer fighting against an army that might break through. They are fighting against an army that is already broken. Their deceptions are less about preventing catastrophe and more about accelerating the inevitable end. By February, they have moved far to the east, toward the Rhine River. The war is moving with them, day by day, toward German territory. The Ghost Army is part of this advance. They are assigned to the Ninth Army, under the command of General William Simpson. Their job remains the same. Make the Germans believe the Americans are stronger than they are. Make the Germans hesitate. Make the Germans make mistakes. One of their final major deceptions comes in March 1945, at a place called Oppenheim. Here, American forces are preparing to cross the Rhine River, the last great natural barrier between them and Germany's heartland. The Germans know an attack is coming. They are moving reserves to counter it. And the Ghost Army is ordered to create a fake crossing 5 miles north of the real one. They position their inflatable tanks. They broadcast the sounds of a massive assault crossing. They generate false radio traffic suggesting that thousands of American troops are pouring across the river at Oppenheim. And the Germans believe it. German reserves are moved north to counter the crossing at Oppenheim. And hours later, when the real crossing comes at the intended location, the Germans have fewer forces to defend it. It is a textbook deception, perfectly executed. Lives are saved because the Ghost Army has, once again, convinced the Germans to believe in an illusion. By April, Germany is collapsing. Cities are falling. Russian forces are entering from the east. American forces are advancing from the west. The Ghost Army is no longer needed. Deception has become irrelevant when the enemy is so thoroughly defeated. On May 7, 1945, Germany surrenders unconditionally. The war in Europe is over. The Ghost Army has conducted 23 separate deception operations over the course of 7 months. In that time, they have never lost a man to enemy fire. Not one. Not because they were lucky, but because the deceptions worked. The Germans never fully penetrated their illusion. The Germans never discovered that the Ghost Army was not what it appeared to be. The soldiers of the Ghost Army are assembled in formation. They are told that they have performed an important service. They are told that their work has saved lives. Some of them are promoted, some of them receive medals, but they are also told something else. They are told to keep it secret. What they have done is not to be discussed. It is classified. It is to remain unknown. This secrecy is not punishment. It is not intended as a slight. It is military security. The deception techniques they have pioneered must remain secret because they might be used again. Future wars might require future ghost armies. Future enemies must not know that such things are possible. So the soldiers of the Ghost Army keep their silence. They go home. They return to civilian life. They become artists again, set designers, radio operators, illustrators, businessmen. They marry, they have children, they grow old, and they never talk about their war. Bill Hogue becomes a successful artist. He teaches, he paints, he lives a quiet life in Tennessee. But every once in a while, he thinks about November 1944. He thinks about standing in a frozen forest, broadcasting sounds into the darkness, trying to convince an enemy that ghosts were real soldiers. Shai Schindel becomes an advertising executive in New York. He works on major campaigns. He creates images designed to manipulate perception and convince people to believe things. It is not so different from what he did in the war. But in his civilian life, no one dies if his deception fails. Carl Shoup becomes a businessman. His mother, who worried so much about him during the war, lives to see him marry and raise a family. She never truly understands what her son did during the war. He never explains it to her. He simply tells her that he was in the army and he survived. The Ghost Army dissolves officially in 1946. The 23rd Headquarters Special Troops is deactivated. The soldiers are reassigned. The inflatable tanks are destroyed. The loudspeaker equipment is scrapped, the operation is closed, and it is locked away in classified files where it will remain for 50 years. Epilogue. It is not until 1996, 51 years after the war ended, that the truth finally emerges. A documentary filmmaker named Rick Beyer is researching a completely different topic when he stumbles across a reference to the Ghost Army in declassified military archives. He tracks down some of the surviving soldiers, he interviews them, and slowly the story emerges from the shadows where it has been hidden for half a century. The soldiers are old men now. Some are in their 80s, some are dying. For the first time in their lives, they are allowed to tell their story. For the first time in 50 years, they can speak about what they did during the war. What emerges is a story that challenges everything we think we know about war. War is not always about superior firepower. War is not always about brute force and courage in combat. Sometimes war is about deception. Sometimes it is about theater. Sometimes 1,000 artists with rubber tanks and recorded sounds can accomplish what 10,000 armed soldiers might not. The men of the Ghost Army are no longer alive to see their story finally told in full. Most of them have passed away. But their legacy lives on. Their story is taught in military academies now. It is studied by officers learning about unconventional warfare. It is remembered as one of the most creative and audacious military operations of the entire Second World War. And in a way that is fitting, because the Ghost Army's greatest victory was not on any battlefield. It was in the mind. It was in making people believe something that was not true. It was in proving that perception is more powerful than reality. It was in demonstrating that imagination can be a weapon as deadly as any gun. The men who made up the Ghost Army were artists. That is what defined them. And art, in the end, is about creating illusions. It is about making people see what you want them to see, about making them feel what you want them to feel, about bending reality just enough to change the world. For 7 months in 1944 and 1945, 1,100 American soldiers did exactly that. They bent reality, they changed the world. And they did it with cardboard and electricity and the audacious belief that a lie, told well enough, can save more lives than 1,000 truths ever could. The Ghost Army faded from history as completely as the inflatable tanks they deployed vanished into the night. But for those who fought in it, for those who believed in it, for those who understood what it meant, the Ghost Army was never really a ghost at all. It was the most real thing in their lives. It was the war they fought. It was the victory they won. It was the story they could finally tell. And that story, hidden for half a century in the classified files of the Pentagon, is proof of something remarkable. It is proof that sometimes the most powerful weapon in war is not a gun. It is not a tank. It is not an army. Sometimes the most powerful weapon is the human imagination, the belief that anything is possible. The audacious conviction that you can fool an entire nation's military with nothing more than cardboard, electricity, and courage. The Ghost Army proved it, and now the world knows.